Hi, Davi here, and today we have a new episode in the art review series, and today we'll be checking out the work of Tuda6. They do have a YouTube channel. I did check it out. They have one video, time lapse. Is it time lapse? It's a process video where you can see them paint, and they do use Photoshop. So I'm assuming for most of their works here, it's done also in Photoshop. Now, the reason why I chose this artist for today is because it just caught my eye. I mean, I tend to explore a lot of pages of different artists, and this one just interested me the most, or it just seemed more interesting. Because when you zoom in on their pieces and everything, it's pretty wild. It reminds me of another artist I reviewed, Danila Kalinin something. I'll link their work or that artist in the description below as well, but very wild brushstrokes, painterly strokes. Obviously it's impressionistic, but I do like, because impressionistic artwork can be done in so many ways, but for this types it's way more brushy, where I guess the brushstrokes are just more apparent than because you can create impressionistic pieces with very small brushstrokes. For example, the last artist I reviewed, Sayok98 something, they did have very impressionistic artwork, but the brushstrokes are actually very small, almost like pastel. They look like pastel paintings, right? But for this one, it's a different kind of impressionism. It's so like big brushstrokes, and it's almost kind of hard to see the edges sometimes. Like, for example, the leg sort of mixes with, I'm assuming the thing behind it, it's some kind of tail. You know, I have been seeing this character in my feed or recently. It's like a shark chick with a maid uniform. I'm not sure if they're from a game or something, but yeah. And also this chick, I think it's a rat chick. I think it's from a game somewhere, like Zero. I think that's the name of the game. But if you just zoom in here, right? I think the leg is the neck rather is a bit too long, or maybe that's just how the character is. But yeah, I do like the painter. I mean, look at this. Even the way it's erased, I can definitely tell that they're just picking the white from the background to erase. So basically the same brush used for painting is the same brush used for erasing. And I like it. It's a very direct way of painting, which I'm a fan of. I personally like doing this kind of approach. And you can tell by the brush, it's in the directional mode, right? It just follows your stroke in one sort of position. And if you really zoom in, you do see the texture. They did employ a canvas texture, and I think that adds even more to that painterly look. The soft edges are actually hard to see. I'm not sure if they're using some kind of, maybe a soft brush, a basic one, but that's pretty much it. Their main brush would have to be this, a thing, right? This brush, and maybe a soft brush to do some slight gradients. But from afar it works, right? And they have so many types. Look at this. Now with this kind of approach, or if you look at their entire portfolio, the background is usually white, so it's really focused on one specific character, and they tend to do like a head to toe view, so you can see the full character usually. And the poses tend to be, they're more like poster shots, like they're directly facing you, like standing positions. Let me just see this. Ooh. Look at this. Look at, it's so wild to me, but it's so sexy. Now notice for the face, not many brush strokes. It's basically one flat area. You do see a bit more variety, obviously, with the eyes, but even that is a bit more simple. Now, the moment you leave that, you look at the body, it's so like wild and just it's so artsy, which is definitely my type. I know some people don't like this kind of approach. Even for the artist I reviewed, Danila something, I've gotten maybe 1 or 2 comments. They did not really like it. I mean, I get it. You know, people have different tastes, but for me, this is. I mean, I like all kinds of art, but to me, this is the kind of art that got me into art. It's the wildness, the boldness. I think. I mean, yeah, it's impressionistic, but I think it's really more about being bold, right? With your brushstrokes and really being confident in showing off those brushstrokes and letting it show. For example, even here in the bottom half, right? The shoes and even these background elements, right? Just letting it show, erasing some parts with the same brush. It just, there's like an energy to it. Even here, right? It kind of offshoots a bit around the knee. Oh. And again, look at the edges. Sometimes it fades away. Sometimes it's kind of not blurry in a sense that kind of like this, but it's more like undefined sometimes. Like it's hard to see the edge, right? But you can kind of piece it out together, right? Like at the very least, you get the gist of it. This one's interesting because you're painting in dark. So, well, maybe they did start out with a line, sort of rough sketch, and then they painted the black in. But sometimes there are artists who start out with like black, and then they paint in the light. So these ones are kind of rare. The background is usually in white. I mean, look at this one. I mean, it's a basic standing position, but why does it look so like powerful? I think. I mean, look at this. It's a round brush right there. Right? It's a bit chaotic. But the energy is there. I mean, you can always refine something like this. But, yeah. The problem with that is sometimes when you refine things, you do lose this energy. I mean, right now, again, she's just standing with her sword, right? But I think it's because of the brush strokes. Like, you can sort of feel the movement in those strokes that it makes this simple standing position more dynamic than it actually is, right? I mean, the movement of the hair, I think also helps. So there's that. But I think it's the wildness of the brush strokes. Like, it's almost like she's appearing in this place, like she just teleported here, right? Maybe there's a bit of gradient map use. I do see a bit of color in the edges of these brushstrokes. Let me just see the color a bit. Like, how do they do the colors here? This one's a seated position, right? I mean, look at this whole leg here. These legs, it's almost like you'll see this a lot with reminds me of the work a little bit of Alvaro Castañé. I mean, he does watercolors and mostly environments, but there's sort of oh, let me just see some like this one. Like there's a looseness to it, right? I mean, yeah, there's a boldness to it where it's really just confident. This is, just adding in the strokes without any sort of care for it in a way, and just letting it sort of be there. But with that boldness, there is a sort of looseness where you're not being so tight with it, where you're kind of nonchalant about the whole process in a way. Right, look at how the shoes aren't even that defined, but it works. Interesting. So let me just look at the video here, show you the time-lapse video. Is it time-lapse or real-time? Not sure. I'm assuming it's real-time. So as you can see, they are using Photoshop. And I'm guessing the brusher is under wet edge, because you do get this sort of effect when you have the wet edge feature on in Photoshop. So look at how rough that is. Very sort of gestural initial strokes, right? With the basic round brush, with wet edge on. Excuse me, just had a sip of coffee there. And then they painted in the white, because I think this character has white hair. So basically the initial dark strokes there were just there to plot where the hair ought to be, and then once you have that, then you add in the white for the actual color. So with this kind of approach, it's very direct. You just keep painting over your previous strokes. It can be a bit messy, I know that myself, but if it's a process that works for you, then you're just gonna have to use it, and your work can look good. You just have to keep pushing to refine things eventually, or to at least get some clarity once you're done adding in those new strokes to replace the ones before, right? Look at how the layers are very minimal, not much, and it's a very direct approach, but I think it's the most freeing. Sometimes it's unpredictable, but there's sort of there's like a risk-taking thing that's happening here. Now again, look at the face. Look at how flat it is. Like it's not as rendered, say, as the hair, which is very common in like anime kind of illustrations. You just want to keep the face as simple as possible. Maybe render the eyes a bit. Sometimes I do see the lips being rendered a little more, but for the rest of the face, you want to keep it somewhat smooth, somewhat consistent. So the overall shadows were added after, so that's interesting. So I guess this is more of a 30-minute sketch. I mean, to be fair, there is no body, obviously, because with this amount of time, you have to focus on something, and I think they did spend more time with the face. So they did bring out the face eventually back, right? Look at that. And it's in grayscale. The only thing that's in color here would have to be the eyes. Yeah, I do that a lot too. Where I flatten the layer, or I create a copy and then I adjust it via the lasso. It's easier, faster to do this in Photoshop. In Clip Studio Paint, you can do it, but whenever you like move photos or move selections and sort of warp them or distort them or adjust them, it's a bit laggy. And I think someone mentioned in one of my comments, I think it's because according to them, Clip Studio Paint doesn't use GPU something, so it doesn't render things the same way as Photoshop does. That's what I read. So yeah, it is faster to do this kind of thing in Photoshop. That's why photo bashing is way more efficient. Like, it's just better in Photoshop than, say, in Clip Studio Paint. Clip Studio Paint is more of an illustration, maybe animation kind of program. Photoshop is more, it's a general sort of image editing software. So yeah, that's it for that video. They only really have one, but yeah. So let me just go back and see what's up. I'm sure we have some more here. Oh, this one's kind of a close-up. Right? Oh my god. Let me just zoom in here. Look at those textures, right? Wow. It really adds a little bit of a like grit or teeth. And in this way, you don't even have to add noise in the end, because usually when you render things in a flat way. Let's say you're using flat colors, no texture brushes. Maybe you're just using the round brush or something, and maybe one soft brush. It can look a bit bland, but if you add a noise texture after all that painting and illustration, it's gonna help sort of add some teeth. But if you're starting out in the beginning with this amount of texture in your brushes, you don't need to add noise in the end. In fact, like this guy is doing, is they're adding some blurs in some of the edges, and in a way that helps soften up some of those textures to balance things out, right? But this part right here really looks nice. Obviously the face is kind of hot. Anyway, so that's it for this art review of, what's her name again? Tuda6. Mommy. Sorry, Mommy. See? I'm not the only one who sees it. So that's it for this art review of Tuda6. I'll link the links in the description below. And I will link also the other guy I reviewed at Danila Kalinin, I think. Hopefully I'm getting the name right. Also very dynamic with their strokes. And very brushy with their strokes. So that's it for this art review, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!